Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today I'm on with Terence Tam. Terence, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Terence Tam. I've been in marketing for over 27 years now. Started as a university lecturer, and today I run my own marketing agency. And what we do is we actually put bumps on seats for webinars and seminars and challenges, events like that, right? So, yep, that's pretty much it, us.
Tell me about what you learned in academia, and then when you built your own business, what did you relearn? What were the changes between academia and the business world?
Yeah, academia was lots of fun because you just get to study a lot. And at that point in time, when you're young, you just love to absorb all the information that you can. But after a while, it's frustrating because you don't get to actually apply what you learn, right? And it's like you're just this whole thing where you're just getting filled, but you don't have the opportunity to actually execute it. Like teaching it is fine, but executing it and seeing the results, wow, that's a different thing. So I think that's a key thing in the switch. And a lot of what was in academia was also frustrating because it was theory, but at the same time, it gave me a strong foundation when I came into, I guess, the real world, as you would call it, and executed some of the stuff. And I understand the principles, but when it actually comes to applying it, it's a kind of like different story. You really have to learn a lot faster as well in the real world because you're spending
Yeah,
real money, right? And you can't keep spending money and keep losing it.
I'm glad you brought that up. I want to ask about that. And now, a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, Adverity. Is your marketing team drowning in data? With so many platforms and sources, it can be overwhelming. If you're spending more time organizing data than analyzing it, you're not alone. But what if you had a solution that makes your marketing data work for you? Introducing Adverity, the platform that helps you build a unified and accurate data foundation. Adverity integrates and transforms all of your marketing data in one place, allowing your marketing and analytics teams to spot trends, optimize performance, and drive results faster. No more guessing and no more data chaos. Just insights that matter. Trusted by global brands like Amex, IKEA, and Red Bull, Adverity has helped businesses gain a competitive advantage and unlock their full potential. Ready to make your data extraordinary? Visit adverity.com and book your demo today. That's Adverity, ADVERITY.com, because your data deserves better. Thanks. And now, back to the episode. There's this sort of preconception that I have about the education system, that teachers aren't really taught to manage budgets, they're taught to spend budgets. There's no teacher managing the school's budget and reducing it. It's here's your budget, spend as much of it as you can. And then there might be some budget cuts, but generally speaking, the thing that separates the business world from academia is the business world, in many cases, academia has public funding. And other cases, if it's private, it's a little bit more stricter for the budget. But for businesses, all of it is private. Do you agree with that? How do you think budgets are looked at differently between the private sector and the education sector?
Yeah, I'm basing it on what happened in Australia when I was a lecturer in Australia, right? So it may not apply to the rest of the world. So if I offend somebody else in the rest of the world, I'm sorry. But this is what happened in Australia, right? So every year we were given a budget, right? So it's like whatever amount, and you just have to spend it. If you don't spend it, they basically think you don't need that much budget. So next year we'll cut your budget, right? So everybody is incentivized to actually spend all that money. Otherwise, they won't get the money in the following year. Whereas when in business, it's completely different. If you can spend as little as possible, get more results, they're like, well, hey, spend much more money next time. So I think that's a whole big paradigm shift. When I was in academia, I was taught to do that way. But when I came into the real world, it's like completely different. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
You're so right. It's the opposite. One is let me spend as much as I can, and the other is let me get as much value as I can.
Yeah.
And that ends up in actually your budget gets bigger if you can prove that you can drive really efficient results. I love that. Thank you, Terence. A really good perspective. So, talking about your time as a teacher transitioning to an agency owner, talk to me about how that transition was. What skills did you have to build? What did you have to put in place to start this agency?
Okay, so I didn't come out of academia and straight away went into my agency business. So what happened was I came out of academia. I actually got into property investing, which is like completely different to what I was doing. But I thought, oh, property is booming. This was in the early 2000s. And I'm like, let's catch this property boom. And I did, and we made some pretty decent dollars from that. At the same time, I realized, hey, I can't keep on buying property because I need cash flow. So I bought into a business, which was a printing business. In that business, we used a lot of the marketing stuff that we learned in academia, but obviously in a more practical sense. So we were running like Google, and back then you could get clicks for 7 cents, which was super crazy, right? And then we started building like videos and all that kind of stuff. And we were running VSLs before VSLs were a thing, like video sales letters. And then eventually that gave me the background to actually have the confidence to start a marketing agency. So I started my marketing agency. It took me like 10 years of playing around with various businesses before I started my marketing agency. So we started this marketing agency around 2014, and we've been running that for 10 years. So it's, yeah, had to get some real world experience, do a lot of real world practical stuff. And then I started my agency because I guess I'm the type that feels responsible if I take on a client and I've never done this before. Let's just try stuff and it doesn't work. I'll feel terrible. So that's why I had to get that real world experience before I started my own agency.
I love that. It's definitely stressful when you're talking about big tests that could fail.
Mm,
And it's one thing if it's a giant client that can afford some failure, and
yeah.
another thing if it's a small business or somebody that's personally negatively impacted. I have friends I work with on marketing, and I feel the same way. You treat the dollars differently when it's a single person that's really
Yep.
mad that owns that versus
Yep.
a massive corporation. And
Absolutely.
in some cases, you get more innovation when you're less afraid of things
Mhm.
failing. Definitely, and I think you would agree when you're working with smaller clients, you take fewer risks
Yes.
and you space them out so that you can really make sure each step is the right one. And then you can always backtrack. So tell me about some of the tactics that you use for your clients through your agency.
Okay, so our agency is focused on building funnels and running ads. So we just focus on ads and funnels, right? We don't do SEO, we don't do anything else. We do some launches for our clients because most of our clients are in the coaching space and coaches and course creators, right? So that's what we focus on. And the tactics we use are through Facebook, through Instagram, YouTube, Google, and what we do is we basically get people to register for an event, be it a webinar, seminar, challenge, whatever it is. But I think what most people, the mistake most people make is that they see that webinar or that event as a win or lose one, just a one shot thing where people buy or don't buy and you miss out on them. So what we're trying to educate our clients constantly is that, hey, that webinar that they registered for, that is just the start of the relationship. Because at any one time, 70% of people are not going to be ready to buy. They may really want your product, but it's just not the right time. So you have to start nurturing them and keep in touch with them. And so we have this whole process where we call it a long tail webinar, where instead of just the webinar, there are all these other events that happen after the webinar. If they still don't buy, they still get into the newsletter, which we still maintain that relationship and continue to build that trust with the prospect. And I think many businesses need to, not just in the coaching space, but in other spaces, other businesses should see that, hey, that lead, although they may not buy today, don't forget about them because they might buy next month or the month after, and they might become a super awesome client. So I think the paradigm needs to shift from being transactional to relational. And we do a lot of thinking around that, strategizing around that. I could talk about, how we run Facebook ads and YouTube ads, but everybody does that. So that's boring.
You're talking about nurturing, and we could talk about CRMs in a moment and how they can help with this. How do you approach people who may have expressed disinterest in
Mm,
the product? Because I was looking at a client's portfolio recently, and I
mm,
saw there was a lot of disqualified people or people who weren't interested, maybe people who unsubscribed from emails, but were
mm,
still marketable by other means. When we're thinking about the purpose of marketing, it's really to cause people who otherwise wouldn't have purchased to purchase. We don't want to
mhm,
spend marketing dollars on inevitable customer journeys. When you see individuals who aren't likely to convert, do you spend
mm.
more dollars against them to try to convince them? Or do you spend your dollars on more neutral prospects? What do you do when you get that negative signal?
Yeah, good question. Look, I think while a lot of people may not be ready to buy, there are some people ready to buy, and then there are those that will never buy no matter what you say. They might have just clicked it in the spur of the moment and registered for your event or webinar, but there are some people that would never buy, right? And those ones you definitely don't want to put in any more ad dollars or any more effort to try and convert them. Of course, and what we're talking about is the middle people, right? The ones that are undecided or not ready. Those are the ones you need to put in the effort to continue to nurture them. And yeah, of course, get them as leads as well. Because at some point in time, they may choose to buy. Looking at, all right, is this particular segment of the market, maybe there is not an offer to market match. Maybe my offer is not really fitting this market. That brings up the strategy of whether you should actually create an offer for this particular market itself. And if you decide to do that, of course, there's a lot of work involved to create that. But if you think that's a sizable market and that is a market that you can profit from, why not? So it's not just about the marketing, it's about the offer as well.
So tell me about that process of aligning with what the market wants. Are you listening? Are you asking your potential or ideal customer profiles what they are looking for? How do you go about that process?
Good question. A lot of that comes to the surveys that you get, right? So every time after we run a webinar, for example, for our clients, we actually get the prospects that actually attended the webinar to fill up surveys. So we get an understanding of what they want and what they don't want and why they didn't buy. So sometimes it's the price, right? Very often it's the price. But other times it's because of other reasons. And so I think in that instance, maybe what you could do is have a waiting list and say, hey, look, guys, I'm thinking of launching this new product that will help you do Z or X. If you're interested, sign up to my waiting list. And if there's enough people, we will notify you when we launch. So that's like a soft way of testing the market without actually creating the product yet. Because you don't want to spend 6 months creating a new course or product or whatever. And you just because a few people answered the survey and said, yes, I'll buy it. And then you don't end up having anyone buy it. So I think that's a soft way to gauge whether there's an interest in it. And I like the analogy that the Flix co-founder used. One of the things he says is that everybody thinks, oh yeah, I have this great business idea. I want to quit college and I want to raise funds and start this business. But he said, why don't you just write your idea on a postcard, a poster, stick it on the notice board? If no one responds, it's probably a bad idea. If people are responding to it, then maybe you should start. Maybe it's a possible good idea at the end of the day.
Yeah, listening to the market is so important. So I want to learn more about your sort of process of actually building the business. And
Mm.
how did you go about that? Did you hire people? I'm sure you probably started with just yourself doing like
Yeah,
a project for a client, but talk to me about that evolution of client
sure.
management.
Okay, so when I first started, I thought I will start a lifestyle business, right? Just manage a few clients, earn enough money, and be happy. That kind of mindset. But as I went along, I'm going, oh, it'd be good to get help with this. So I started hiring some freelancers. Eventually, I hired a full time staff. And I'm like going, oh, this is great. And I can get more clients now. So it's one thing led to another. And I'm like going, really, what we need to do is stop thinking of this as a lifestyle business and start thinking about it as a real business. So I had to expand my mind and get rid of all those beliefs that were limiting me. And that's how we grew the business. And it was basically looking at what was doing. So if if I were running ads, if I were doing the copy, building the funnels, doing the reporting. Now I need to hire one person to do each of these. And which one is the biggest bottleneck right now? For example, it might be copywriting was my bottleneck like a year ago. So I need to hire more copywriters so that they can basically take away all that work from me and free me up, right? And then what's the next bottleneck in the business? And you work on that and hire, systemize, and nowadays use AI, for example, to actually make things flow easier for you. And the main thing I feel is that as the business owner, you need to free up as much of your work as possible and buy back your time with the revenue that comes through. The whole ultimate idea is to have a self-managing business, as Dan Sullivan says. Basically, you can just go on holidays and the business runs better than with you in it. So that is the ultimate goal.
I love that. It's a very admirable goal. Definitely. We're in America, and so you can achieve that goal, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody, not everywhere in the world, and not everybody has the opportunity, but we do. And it's really awesome that you're going after it. That's the American dream, really. So that's really cool. What did you learn along the way? What were some of the challenges of building this agency?
I think the challenges came in many forms. First, I think, and every entrepreneur can probably attest to this, is the challenges you have with yourself, right? Mindset, belief systems, and all that. One of the mindsets that I had was like, okay, how can I have a seven-figure business when I had never built one before? You think that you need to be this special person to build this seven-figure business. But in reality, it's more okay, if I think bigger, I can actually achieve it. We figure out the how later. But if you really want it, everything else falls into place, right? If you really desire something, like for example, I'm sure you yourself, Alex, when you met your first love or wife, you're like, you just want her and you do everything and anything to get her. Similar in business, I think that was the first thing, that you have to desire it enough and get rid of all the junk that says, oh, you can't have it or you shouldn't have it because such and such. I think that's the first thing. Other challenges I would say is always to keep the focus. There's always all these little things that pop up along the way. You can do lead gen, and that's a good business model. You can make a lot of money from that. Or you can partner with this guy and sell the e-commerce products. And I've tried all that, to be honest. Bottom line is they're just sidetracks, right? The best way, I believe, is that once you find your niche and you find a profitable market, is to just zoom in and focus all your efforts on it and become the best in the world at it. And that is what we're constantly attempting to do. So that is the second thing, which is like not getting distracted. And I think the shiny object syndrome is a real thing for all of us entrepreneurs. And the third thing is just the leadership thing, right? As you grow your team, and people don't just work for money, right? People want to come to work for a purpose. And I think one of the misconceptions for most people is that most entrepreneurs is that they just want to give more money at it, and then we'll hire the best people because we throw the most money around. But that's not necessarily the case. I think like a lot of people want to go to work for a purpose, not just the money purpose. It helps without doubt to a certain extent, But beyond that, it's more, okay, I want to go to work because I'm helping make a difference in other people's business, right? When I come up with marketing strategy and my clients get results, I'm helping the business to grow and I'm feeding their families and their employees. So I think just having that purpose to make an impact, I think is so important, and being clear and communicating that as a leader, that's super important to grow a
Yeah.
business, because without a team, in my industry anyway, you don't have a business.
How did you select people as your first employees? What were some of the frameworks you used to make decisions through?
Okay, good question. At first, honestly, I was just like, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I'm like going, oh, this person sounds good. I think they have the right attitude. But nowadays, we have a more systemized approach. I don't actually do the first interview. I get my operations manager to do the first interview. And what we look for is that this prospective employee is aligned with our values. So we have 6 core values, right? And they need to align with the 6 core values. If they do not align with any one of them, or we feel like a bit sus, then yeah, it's they don't even qualify to talk to me. And we have found that to work extremely well. So we have 2 rounds of interviews, actually a third round, and we do a personality test as well, just to make sure they're not just saying stuff that we want to hear and then in reality there's someone different, right? But yeah, we do a personality test, make sure they're the right fit. It's not 100% guarantee thing, but so far we have gotten much better team members as a result of this multiple process. And once they sign up to, that's just the beginning, because we give them a 6-month probation period as opposed to the regular 3 months. Because 3 months, you really can't get to know how a person works, really. 6 months, yes, you can put them through some difficult situations deliberately or unintentionally and see how they respond to it. And I think going through that whole process, 6 months, when they get through the 6 months, they're probably a pretty good fit for your business. So that's how I do it.
I haven't heard of a probationary period. What is that?
I guess there's certain laws in different countries, right? And in that probation period, it's just easier to say, look, it was great meeting you, let's part ways kind of thing, right? Without going through the whole give 3 warnings and all that stuff in order to tell them to leave, right? That 6 months is, we'll just give you like 1 week notice if we feel we are not a right fit, and you do the same with us.
You know, it's funny. We don't have that in America because the whole time is
Right.
the probationary period employment. So
Okay.
there, there's no non-probationary period.
Yeah. Ultimately, if you really want to get rid of them, you can after the probationary period. But I think having that 6 month to tell them they're on probation makes them also work a bit harder, in a sense, to adhere to your values and learn the systems and all that kind of stuff.
Can you share? You don't have to share all of them because I know that 6 is a lot. What are like the top 1 or 2 principles or values that you
Sure.
have for your employees that you'd recommend maybe other people use as well?
Okay, so one thing is we adopted from the book by Jocko Wilkins, Extreme Ownership. So really about taking responsibility for your role and not handling your role properly and giving it to someone else or shifting blame and all that kind of stuff. If anything goes bad, you evaluate based on, okay, this situation is happened because I played a role in it, or I didn't see this. So that's a great way to learn. It's not about assigning blame, right? It's about, okay, how can we improve? Because if we made a mistake, so everybody is on board with not pointing fingers and starting arguments. Oh, you made this mistake, you did this. It's no, we all sit down. We actually say, look, guys, I admit I could have done better because of this and this. I could have like maybe checked this thing, and that's how we improve things and improve systems so that we don't repeat it in the future. The other one is about humility and growth, right? So I think all of us are just willing to take that feedback, because I think that's one of the things, like when people We don't have place for egos, right? Because if you have this ego and I can't tell you what I'm thinking, people can't tell you what I'm thinking because we're afraid you get butt hurt, and it just makes it so hard, and it's like stepping on eggshells. Guys, we don't have time for that. Can we just be transparent and say things as they are and move forward? Because that's how we grow as well. So honest feedback to each other with the purpose so that we're continuously growing. One of the other things is that which is closely tied to this, is having that excellence, right? That spirit of excellence. So our motto is that we want to be the best in the world at what we do, and that means that everyone in the company is also striving to become the best at their particular responsibility, whether it's building funnels, copywriting, managing ads, whatever it is. I think it is so important that everybody is striving towards that excellence, and that every ad or every funnel that bears our name, where we actually help the client create it, we feel a sense of pride in launching an ad, in launching a video ad, right? So that it's not, yeah, something goes out there, we feel that proud of actually launching it, even though it may not work. As with marketing campaigns, not every marketing campaign works, but at least we know we've done our best. So those
Yeah,
are
that's
just
really
three of them
interesting.
off my head.
Yeah, and those are great values. I wanted to ask you about enemies in business. People don't just hand you money in the way capitalism works. Like you have to
Mm,
fight for it. And there's going to,
mm.
and if you're making money in a certain way, other people are going to try to beat you. How do you navigate that? Can you tell us any examples of battles you've had to fight so your business continue to thrive?
Yeah, yeah. So we do have competition, no doubt about it. I think the reason why we still have customers that are super loyal to us is that the piece I mentioned just now is about having that excellence and having that pride whenever a piece of our marketing goes out. I think the other thing is like genuinely caring for the customer's business. I think that's super important. And so many times I have customers or new prospective customers come to me. They tell me that, yeah, this marketing agency that we previously worked with, at first they were pretty good. And then they assign us to like some intern or whatever. And they never communicated with us, or they didn't care about us anymore. Maybe we became a small account as they grew. So we make sure that we don't ever do that to any of our customers, because all of them are super valuable to us. And for us, to be honest, I'm not great at sales. So I don't want to be doing sales calls and closing new people all the time and learning about their business from scratch all the time. So I'd rather keep our existing clients and grow slow rather than have that big churn. And that's why some of our clients worked with us for up to 8 years. Most of our clients on average are with us for 4 years, kind of thing, which I think it's relatively rare in the marketing agency space.
It does.
Yeah.
And that bait and switch is extremely common
Mm.
because it's profitable, right? You want to wow them, get them hooked, and then lower the cost to
Yeah.
deliver services.
Yeah.
So I do respect that. And I think that is a good way to answer the question, which
Mm.
is you just beat them with better quality delivered to the client. And so you're not really competing in the same game as a lot of
Great.
your competitors. So that's how you
Yeah.
differentiate. And I think that's very smart for etching out your niche.
And I think
So
just to add to that, I would say that we're constantly researching new things, new technologies, and better ways to help our clients get better results, right? So we're constantly thinking, not just doing the status quo thing, but thinking about the clients is like, hey, why don't you do a new launch of this product? Or why don't you create a new lead magnet for this particular thing? Because I think we could generate re-engage your prospects in your list. So we're constantly thinking forward, not just we just do run ads, build funnels, and that's it.
what sorts of services do you add to your core services as upsell?
Okay. So I think that's one thing that's a bit unique about us. We don't have any upsells. Reason is because the business model that we operate under includes a profit sharing element to it. That's why we're able to afford to go above and beyond for our clients and work in a real partnership model. The way we structure things is that the more they make, the more they pay us, right? So of course, it's in our best interest to make sure they make more money and make more sales. So that's why we do launches for them. We look at their webinars, how we can improve that, how we can re-engage their prospects, all that stuff. Because the way we structure things is that we do everything, but you pay us as your company does better, right? You pay us more as your company does better. And I think that is a much better model in my experience anyway, compared to, oh, I should write my client an email. Let me talk to him. Hey, Mr. Client, I need to charge you an extra $500 for these emails, right? And then they're like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And they feel like that you're trying to take their money rather than trying to serve them. So I don't feel that's a right way to do it. So I'm pretty happy with the model that we have.
That's great. Final question. If you were to give any advice to entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial minded folks that want to start an agency, a marketing agency, what would your top tips be?
Okay, good question. Look, if I were going to, I think the best way I can answer that question is to go back to myself 10 years ago and what I would advise him to do. And I would say the key thing is like, all right, don't try and go out to the big market, right? Use your existing contacts that you might have. Maybe you have a friend that's a chiropractor. Maybe you have a friend that's in real estate, right? And make sure that you have a true passion for that particular industry as well. And then do like a profit split thing with this person, right? Test it out, because you might want to run ads, you might do SEO, whatever it is, right? Do a profit split thing. At least then you start getting testimonials. So you get your testimonials, and that's where you can get really good at one industry. And don't jump from one thing to another. Maybe you want to test 2 or 3 industries at the start, but then narrow down to one that you're really passionate about. Ideally, you have some experience in, and just really go for that. Make sure it's profitable as well. Certain niches, there's just no money in it, and don't touch them. If you find a niche, just really narrow down, focus on that niche. And that's one thing nobody told me when I entered the coaching niche, is that it's like hard to scale because every single coach needs personalized work. Even if 2 coaches are talking about property investing, their backstories, their system, everything is usually different, right? So I can't use one ad for one coach and use it for the same another coach. Whereas other industries like physiotherapy, chiropractors, lawyers, you could use the same ad copy for 100 different lawyers, for example, right? And you can still generate leads for them. So ideally, you want to focus on the niche like that and just really become like the go-to agency for that particular niche, whatever niche you choose.
Thank you, Terence. You have shared so much valuable information, and I love to see a good public to private sector or education to business sector transition. It's really impressive to see. And yeah, thank you again for joining and for sharing everything you've learned.
Thanks, Alex. It was a pleasure. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for listening.